Yo, yo, yo. What is happening, everybody? Let's go. Let's go. How are we doing today? Let's get it. I just realized that the title I have spelt incorrectly, so I'm going to go ahead and edit that real quick. But how are we doing on this midweek podcast? Great to be back, guys. And just what a wild, wacky game. I mean, I'm still coming to grips with the fact that we beat the Lions after being down 17 in the first half. We got people in the house. Let's go. We got Renee Cruz with all of the awesome nicknames for the 49ers. Bang Bang Niner Gang, Super Bowl 58. We got the Hot Boys, the red and gold. We got the Bay Bombers, the Gold Rush, Fog City. Love to see it. Beige Noir in the house. Let's go, Niners. I like how you can turn on notifications for one particular video and not have to change anything in settings. Good job by you, YouTube. Beige says, let's go, Niners. We got Melissa in the house. Hey there, Shifty. Hope we get some more people in here. I hope so, too. Look, this was pretty last minute. I was planning on getting things set up a little bit earlier and trying to get more people in here. And I think there's a lot of people who are streaming right now talking about the NFC Championship Game or talking about the Super Bowl that's coming up. I just wanted to do this kind of typical podcast. It's always great doing it live. We also can interact with all of you guys too, which just makes it so much more fun. Got a couple of notes here from the game. Did you hear Melissa says that they're now calling it the ladybug catch? That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I heard about that. Brandon Ayuk, there was a ladybug and there was a ladybug at the stadium with like the cheerleaders and whatnot. That was just a crazy play. But first off, before we get into it, I just want to thank everyone for being here today. If you're listening or watching this later on, that's awesome. But also a huge thank you to everyone who was at the stream for the game, the Lions and the 49ers NFC Championship. What a game that it was. I mean, it's so cliche, but it's just, it's a tale of two halves. It's why we play four quarters in football. And the first half, look, the Lions had us in the first half, not going to lie. But in the words of George Kittle. But yeah, I thought it was just, just the character, the perseverance, the resilience for the 49ers to come back. But first off, yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for being here tonight and also for the stream. It was so much fun. You guys really kept me positive, upbeat, and going when things seem to be at their worst. So thank you so much. I appreciate you guys for that. Also want a little bit of news. So pretty much this time next week, I'm going to be doing a live show on his channel, 49ers Ultimate Report. He's been by the chat a bunch of times before. One of the really good guys, John J, but check out 49ers Ultimate Report. The link isn't up or anything yet, but pretty much this time next week, essentially, we'll be on his channel. We'll be talking about, I'm sure, the championship game, of course, previewing the Super Bowl, which is still a little bit wild to think about that we have the Super Bowl. It's just amazing. What a season. Before we get into talking about the NFC Championship game, so I want to kind of go through a lot of things in that game. We'll get to some more of the comments here. Chua says, why we went to tackle, didn't wrap them up. I mean, look, the Detroit running backs are really good, really slippery. I think there was a number of factors that played into that. The Niners not putting themselves in good positions to make the tackles, potentially a little bit. Maybe there's a lack of effort in some places, in some cases. But overall, I think that the Niners were able to respond, obviously, in the second half. Were able to make the plays when we needed them and made timely plays. But look, absolutely, 100%. Couldn't agree more that I think against the Chiefs, you can't do what we did against the Lions. I mean, the run defense got to be on point. I kind of have an idea for what we maybe want to do in that game, run defense wise. But we can't be letting Isaiah Pacheco get 6, 7, 8 yards a carry just because that just leaves Mahomes to do whatever he wants then. So, but overall, you know, that we're going to talk more about the Chiefs next week. I'll potentially do my own kind of preview live podcast. And then also, on 49ers Ultimate Report next week, which is going to be awesome. And yeah, talking Super Bowl, always a good thing. Now when we get into the game, the NFC Championship game, and it started just about as badly as you could expect. Stephen Brown says, "You're awesome, Shifty. I can't wait for the Super Bowl. The 49ers have done a hell of a job in the playoffs, and Purdy is my hero." That is awesome. Yeah, Purdy was amazing, and especially in the second half, he turned it on, and he was the MVP of the game. He was ridiculously good. Mario Yoshi. Okay. I like it. 49ers crush Arrowheads, bring number 6 home. I'd love to see it. I'd love nothing more. I think it could be a big George Kittle game. We all know he wants vengeance. Beige says, "Who is that trashy reporter I hate?" And I don't like the word hate. It's a strong word that carries anger with, Amy Trask, who said, in the divisional round, he's like, there's 4 games, there's only 7 good quarterbacks, and Brock Purdy's not whatever. Brock Purdy, 2 comebacks in the playoffs. He's the one standing with Patrick Mahomes left in the Super Bowl. So, I'm sure she's eating her own words. Yarky Johnson in the house from New Orleans. Beautiful. Somewhere that I've always wanted to go and spend time. Beautiful. Well, apparently, Melissa says Purdy's in the top 10, according to Chris. Look, I can see where people like the tangibles of guys like Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and Mahomes and all these guys. And I do think that they are, better quarterbacks per se than Brock Purdy. But right now, look, I'm 1000% stoked to be rolling with Brock Purdy. I think he's been awesome for us, and I really have little to no complaints. I think he's played really, really well. Now, getting into the first half of the game against the Lions in the first quarter, it started really, really badly. Edgard, how we doing, buddy? So the Lions basically marched down the field, and the Lions on that first drive threw a lot of different looks at us, kind of outside zone runs, up the middle, a little bit of passing here and there, but then they get the end around like trickery play with Jameson Williams. And the Niners defense, we were in 6s and 7s. We didn't know what we were doing, where we were going. Unfortunately, one of the guys that you kind of have to point out in terms of just really struggling in the run defense, it was Oren Burks. And in that base defense, and that's something that the Lions wanted to do, they went after Oren Burks. He wasn't in his gaps. We play, when it comes to defense, you got to be in your gap, and you got to maintain those gap responsibilities. The other big thing is when you're playing defensively, if we remember back when we had Robert Saleh as our defensive coordinator, some of the things he would always preach is like playing fast and playing violent. Like, you have to play fast if you're going to be successful, especially against the run, because if you hesitate, the guys are going to get their blocks. It's going to open up the lanes. That's something that typically the 49ers have been so good at, is that when the ball snapped, they read it. Like Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, all these guys just absolutely just fly to the ball without a moment's hesitation. And we didn't see that. We haven't seen that for a number of weeks now. And that's the concerning part. And that's a big reason why I think that the defense has taken a big step back with regards to run defense. It's not playing aggressively, maybe not trusting what you're seeing, and guys just not being in their gaps where they need to be. If you look at it too, some other big issues that we were having, of course, in that game against the Lions is like trying to maintain the edge, not only on the Jameson Williams big touchdown run, but just throughout the game. Jahmyr Gibbs in the first half, his touchdown run, those crack blocks that the receivers were getting down on our edge players, just not good enough. And we saw, I think maybe at this point, we've all seen the clip where it shows like Chase Young maybe not putting in that effort. Kevin Givens as well. And I think that Chase Young's had some bad plays, had some good plays, but it's just when you see that lack of effort, it's definitely concerning, especially considering what was at stake when we talked about the NFC Championship game. Chase Young played 56 snaps. To me, ideally, in the Super Bowl, he's playing maybe 25, 30. I'd rather have him have 25, 30 good snaps as opposed to just just getting worn down. I'd rather have him fresh, especially for later in the game when it comes to the Super Bowl. Melissa says, now there's one fantastic QB in the Super Bowl, and Brock Purdy. There we go. I mean, look, I think Purdy, as you're saying, in 2 weeks there will be Brock Purdy. There, I hope so. I hope we're the last one standing. Stephen Brown, to me, the best two quarterbacks are playing in the Super Bowl. I mean, look, there's things to be said, but ultimately, if you had like a fantasy or if you had like a draft where Brock Purdy. Love the guy, and I think he's been so good, but I don't know if I'm taking him like number 2 overall. I love Brock Purdy, love the Niners, but there are a lot of good quarterbacks out there. But Brock Purdy look a lot like Joe Montana. No one will start as badly as Brady did in the Super Bowl against the Falcons. Funny, no one ever talks about how bad he was. Yeah, and Brady was it a pick 6, I think, in that game against the Falcons in that Super Bowl. I think he had maybe 2 interceptions as well, but it's not how you start, it's how you finish. How's it going, Thomas? Great to have you here. But one of the things too, we got Ashton in the house too. Good to see you. I feel like it's been a little while. Aggressiveness. In fact, KC boys have an excessive infighting combat style. Well, I think that especially against the Lions, it seemed like we were just a little bit late to everything. And that Lions offense is damn good. And let's give credit where it's due. Ben Johnson, he's going to spend another year in Detroit. But when you have those weapons, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs is a really good 1-2 combo. That offensive line is really good for the Detroit Lions. And that was without their starting left guard, Jonah Jackson, who's a damn good player himself. So, they really took advantage of what we were doing. I think we were just a little bit we kind of hesitated. And I think that's something that I want to see in the Super Bowl is I want to see the defense, play aggressive. Look, if you give up a big play here or there, it's going to happen. The Chiefs are going to put up some points, no question about it. But I'd rather go out playing aggressively and trusting what you're seeing as opposed to playing back. And essentially, and what the Chiefs like to do is just, death by 1,000 cuts. And I don't want to see that happen. That's for damn sure. Overall, though, the first half, the defense stunk in the first half. There's no two ways about it. You give up 24 points and a half of football. That's dreadful. We couldn't get a stop. We seemed helpless trying to stop the Lions. The fact that they settled for a field goal towards the end of the half, that felt like a really big win. Of course, throwing the interception in the first half, Brock Purdy didn't really help. We'll talk about that momentarily. But, in the offense, the game should have been closer than what it was. I mean, of course, Jake Moody misses the field goal, but just a tale of two halves. First half defensively, just about everything that could have went wrong did go wrong. Missing tackles, somehow it looked like a lack of effort when you're full of energy and you're pumped up for the game. And I think the guy's a little bit like me. Honestly, I was shell shocked. Like, I didn't know what to say. I was speechless. And I'm sure you saw Dre Green on the sideline, like throwing his helmet. And I think some things like that eventually pumped the team up. And I also think that once the offense got rolling, that also gave the defense a ton of confidence too, that they can go out, be aggressive and do their thing. Also, look, the Lions eventually kind of, they shot themselves in the foot a lot in that game. Now, first half, when we look at the offense, I mean, it was the Christian McCaffrey show. It was the Christian McCaffrey show on offense in the first half. He had that really good stiff arm on Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, CJGJ, that guy who I think that he's become, a bit of a villain in terms of what 49er fans think. Smash the like button, says Brian Hell. Yeah, there we go. Ashton. Okay, cool, Ash. That was awesome. Fest Life, let's go. Let's go. Great to have you in the stream. Fest Life, Reggae's here. Stephen Brown, our defensive coordinator, made some awesome adjustments in the second half. If you watch the tape, couldn't agree more. And we'll talk about the second half coming up. Have to contain running Mahomes. Totally right, Melissa. And then Chua says, Shifty, question is to you is why we struggle against the screen game. I think that, again, in the screen game, the key to it is being aggressive and you have to absolutely fly to the football. Because if you even hesitate for a moment, when those players come out to block, the receivers are out there blocking, the offensive linemen kick out, that's when you see it. Now, the times when you see teams absolutely blow it up is, it takes a lot of skill, a lot of talent, a lot of watching tape where you can you predict that. Let's say you see the DB and they predict, I think this is going to be a screen pass. And then, you remember like when Reggie Bush for the Saints got absolutely wiped out by that Philadelphia Eagles player. But you see those kind of hits, and that's when you see the tackles for loss. We sometimes see it like Debo. He usually manages to maybe get a yard or two, but you just have to be absolutely on it. And also, it doesn't help too. A lot of times when you have your DBs and they're playing 6-7 yards off the line of scrimmage, sometimes, and I think what the Niners should do against the Chiefs is those DBs, especially Mooney Ward, especially Lenore, where we really trust those guys in coverage, get right up in the face of those Chiefs receivers, in my opinion. But when we go back to the first half, I thought that offensively, I thought it was Christian McCaffrey. He was keeping the team, in the game. Of course, he had the touchdown run in the first half. I thought Brock Purdy played okay in the first half. Look, he had that interception, and after watching it, his hand got hit as he threw it. So he definitely couldn't put everything behind it. The ball kind of came out wobbling a little bit. Definitely didn't have everything behind it. However, even still, if he wasn't hit, let's just say if he had a clean pocket and he throws it, I think it's pretty darn close to get that ball to Debo. I mean, it would have had to have been just absolute pinpoint accuracy, which could have happened, but it was definitely a dangerous throw. And considering how the game was going, sometimes, look, you love to see Brock Purdy sling the football, and he did a lot. And he did a lot of really good things in the game, but that was a decision where I'm like, that was when, as soon as it left his hand, I just didn't feel good about it. Again, he got hit. He got hit as he threw it, like his hand got hit, so he couldn't put everything behind it, but still not a great decision, at least in my opinion. And then it set the Lions up in really good field position. They got backed up a little bit because Gardner Johnson decided to just absolutely level Debo Samuel with his back turned to him, which is insane. And as Debo says, that's the only way you can get me is if you come up behind me and just hit me. But yeah, the first half, it was just, I mean, look, you only score 7 points in a half. I mean, look, should it have been 10 with the Moody field goal? Yeah, but even still, if you're scoring 10 points in the first half, not good enough. And the fact is, we just couldn't stop the Lions. The time of possession was completely skewed. They were just doing everything, whatever they wanted to offensively. And I did see there's actually a podcast. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown from the Detroit Lions and his brother Equanimous St. Brown. And he was talking about it. Like, he was talking about the NFC Championship game and just saying we could do whatever we wanted in the first half. And it was just easy. And it looked easy. But of course, things changed when we got to the second half. Now, it was 24-7 at halftime, 3-score game. We looked like we couldn't stop Detroit. The offense was sputtering a bit, but the offense came out and we were able to do some good things. On the first drive, we were only able to put up 3, some really nice plays in that drive. I think that was the drive, if I'm not mistaken, was that the drive where Purdy, kind of had to roll to his left, kind of threw it over to Jawan Jennings, and Jawan Jennings, like one-handed grab, brought it in. Ridiculous play by Jawan Jennings, a risky throw. And if Jawan's not there, if he doesn't make that play, that ball's probably intercepted. But the big game-changing play, and I think that most of you will agree, and yeah, Big City Man. Yeah, the first quarter O-line block, the blocking was just, it wasn't there. I think the Lions keyed in really good on what the 49ers wanted to do. So many times where even for McCaffrey, where he wanted to go, I remember there was a couple of plays he wanted to go to the right, just nothing there. Unfortunately, just things didn't open up. And then it puts you in bad situations. It's so important on first down if you're running the football. If you can even get 4 or 5 yards, like 2nd and 5 compared to 2nd and 10 is just night and day. But yeah, the blocking eventually got there sometimes, but overall, it definitely down towards the goal. I thought the blocking was really good for McCaffrey's, for 2 of his touchdowns. For the Elijah Mitchell touchdown, it was solid, but Mitchell just did his thing. But when we look at the second half, we open up and we get the field goal. So it's 24-10, 2-touchdown game. Lions have a drive, and the Lions are basically picking up where they left off in the first half. They're just marching down the field. It looks really easy. It looks too easy. Niners defense, they're at about what the 49ers maybe. They're at our maybe 25-ish yard line, and we get them into a 4th and 3 situation. And this is where you see a really good play from Nick Bosa. You see a really good call from Steve Wilks. And overall, we did get a little bit lucky here. But Bosa really got some nice pressure on that 4th and 3 in the third quarter. It's 24-10. Now, look, I know how Dan Campbell, I know how he calls games with regards to going for it on 4th down. And it's clearly served the Lions pretty darn well. I think there was something where I was listening to a Lions podcast, and I think that within like 3rd or 4th and short, like 3 or less, they were like 18 for 21, or maybe even 4th and 3 or less. On the season, they were 18 for 21 picking it up, which is a ridiculously high percentage. However, I think in that situation, I think you got to, and look, a field goal is not guaranteed. We saw Jake Moody, but I think in that situation, so here's from the Niner fan perspective, when I saw the Lions going for it on 4th and 3, I was pretty happy. I was kind of thinking like they're not going to try and just take the points here, because even if they get the first down, let's say if they pick up the first down, it's not guaranteed that maybe there's a turnover, maybe whatever. So I would have thought that they would have taken the points there. And when they didn't get it, and it was a bad drop by Josh Reynolds, pretty solid coverage on the play. Again, really nice pressure on the play by Nick Bosa that kind of forced Goff where he couldn't really get everything behind his throw. But when I saw that and it was incomplete, I was like, okay, this is game on here. When we get that big turnover on downs, there's still plenty of time left in the third quarter, and it's a 2-possession game. What do we do? Basically, the first play there, Brock Purdy slings it to Deebo Samuel. We're right around midfield immediately right after the first play, and all of a sudden the Lions are a bit like, oh crap. And then if I'm not mistaken, and you guys can correct me on this, because I know the Lions roster fairly well, but not super well. On that first play of the drive in the third quarter after the turnover on downs, where Brock Purdy hits Deebo Samuel, I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was Kirby Joseph, their safety, who went down injured. Now, thankfully, he wasn't badly hurt, but he missed a couple of plays. The very first play when Kirby Joseph, their safety, who's a ball hawk, who goes out, what's the play call? That's the throw to Brandon Ayuk. The ladybug catch, if you will, as it sounds like it's kind of been coined, is Brock Purdy and Shanahan, we attack the safety that comes in there. I think it was a safety that was kind of trailing with Ayuk. Now, I've actually got into a little bit of a discussion on this on Twitter about was this a good throw or not? Because when you look at it just in real time, you see, well, it should have been intercepted. But also, if you look when Ayuk is running that route, he gets bumped a little bit, and when you're running full speed, like if you get bumped even a little bit, it can just really throw you off. That's why you saw the refs initially throw the flag. Now, they picked it up, and do I think it was pass interference? No, probably not. I don't think it was necessarily intentional from the Lions DB, but obviously we all know what happened. The Lions DB tries to catch it. Ball just like hits off his face mask. Ayuk just has the incredible wherewithal to basically just go get the ball, catch it, and then all of a sudden, bam, 1st and goal within a minute. They've gone from potentially going back up 3 scores to now we have 1st and goal at the 5, and we can make it a 1-score game. And eventually, it took a couple of plays. Brock Purdy slings it to Brandon Ayuk, a really good throw and really nice catch from Ayuk in the end zone. Then 24-17, absolutely game on. Now, before we continue going over, let's get to some of the comments here. Hit the like button. It pushed up the stream. Thank you very much, Melissa. The way Purdy stood in there knowing he was going to get hit. Oh, that was a great throw, too. I kind of forgot about that. Where Purdy hits Deebo Samuel. It was like a 20-yard pickup, but Purdy just got laid out, knew he was going to take a hit, and just still gets it. Really solid throw. I mean, it was really pretty easy for Deebo then, but knowing you're going to take that shot, being able to keep your composure in that type of pressure situation, super impressive. SF played in the first half the way the Cowboys. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely right. The way the Cowboys played against the Packers, true. Yeah, I was really worried at the beginning of the Lions' second half drive. Can we put Charlie Werner to help Colton McKivitz? I thought McKivitz was pretty okay in that game, considering he was going up against Aiden Hutchinson. Now, look, when it comes to the Chiefs, you're going to be looking at like George Karlaftis, who is one of those guys who I think is a little bit underrated. And then who was the other guy that they have on their edge? But I think you'll see maybe some plays where you get like a little chip or whatnot. But overall, when we going back to the game, you scored that touchdown to Brandon Ayuk. It's 24-17, and there's still maybe 6 minutes left in the third quarter. And you go from being down 3 scores at halftime, nothing can go right, to, oh, it's a 1-score game. Then we kick it off to the Lions. Their first play of that next drive, their ensuing drive, Jahmyr Gibbs fumbles the ball. And there was a clear miscommunication, because when you watch that fumble from Jahmyr Gibbs, Gibbs thinks that he should be going to his right initially, but then Goff turns the other way, and then Gibbs has to adjust. Doesn't ever get the handoff solid in his hands. Tashawn Gibson comes in, punches the ball out. Eric Armstead right there picks it up. And then, wow, just in a couple of minutes, just how much the game changed. It was 24-10. All of a sudden, big throw, Ayuk, then bam, touchdown, bam, fumble on the first play, and we got 1st and 10. If we look at that next drive, wow, that run from Brock Purdy, 2nd and 11. Looks like he almost ran over Deebo Samuel, but just to escape the pocket, and then he dives down to the 4-yard line or something like that. Then you a couple of rushes, McCaffrey gets into the end zone, and it's 24-24, and that's just absolutely all to play for. And at that point, I do think that the big change in momentum was the Lions going for it earlier in the third quarter on 4th down and not getting it. But the Lions, you have to be thinking, like, the players and the coaches on the sideline must be thinking, we dominated this game, and how is it we're tied up? And they have all the momentum, and the crowd's going crazy. The defense is playing like a fire lit under them. Wild. I couldn't believe it. It was just, I mean, you guys saw it, here on the stream, that my excitement was just through the roof. Then I think that's where you really saw the Lions. They lost their focus. They really couldn't get anything going then offensively. They struggled quite a bit. You look at it, the very next drive, Montgomery up the middle, nothing. And then drop. Now, the first drop, which was to Sam Laporta, Gibson made a really good play getting in there and essentially knocking the ball out again. So Tashawn Gibson, some amazing plays, back-to-back drives. The other play should have been a 1st down. Goff hits Josh Reynolds, and Josh Reynolds just drops it. Then they got a punt. We go down, score a field goal. Then we take the lead, and the Lions again have to be thinking, what in the world is going on here, where they feel like they must have felt like they've absolutely dominated the game, and now they're losing. And then the other big decision later in that Lions drive after the field goal from the 49ers, they go for it again on 4th down, and they don't get it. And a really good play call by Steve Wilks. Prior to the play, looks like they're going to do a man-to-man defense. And the concept that the Lions had on that play was a pure man beater, but then it actually was a zone defense where Logan Ryan did a really good job of coming out to, to cover Jahmyr Gibbs. And that really threw, and then there was pressure up the middle. Armstead and Hargrave did like a little stunt, and Goff has to roll to his right, for sure not the most mobile guy, throws it downfield, off balance. Amon-Ra can't adjust, and then we get the ball again, 27-24. We go down and score the touchdown, and then for all intents and purposes, that basically iced the game. Now, in the second half, Brock freaking Purdy, just what an unbelievable performance Brock Purdy in the second half, just incredible. We talked about, the throw to Deebo to kick off the second half. You talk about, of course, the one to Ayuk, which I think was a good throw, good decision. I believe it was their backup safety, the first play that he's in the game. In that kind of situation, you just, you throw it to your number one receiver, one-on-one coverage, But Brock Purdy, that play where in the third quarter where the Lions, I think the Lions DB comes in on a blitz. McCaffrey actually misses the block badly, where McCaffrey I don't think saw him because Colton McKivitz was kind of in the way, didn't even see him. But Purdy breaks away from the sack, rolls out to his left, throws it to Juszczyk. Juszczyk somehow keeps his hands, keeps his feet in bounds, catches it, first down. Just those are the plays that I think if you're the Lions, you're just thinking this just might not be our game. We were dominated the first half. Second half, it's been an absolute disaster. We're losing. And then that kind of a play happens. And then you could see we started running the ball effectively. The Lions, I don't want to say they gave up by any means, but they really struggled to stop us after that. Wasted bananas. We got a Chiefs fan in here. Let's go. Bang, bang. It's Kansas City Chiefs gang. It's the Chiefs gang. Look, Patrick Mahomes is great. He's the best quarterback in the NFL. And, absolutely no doubt about that, Wasted Bananas. Thank you for being here, buddy. It's going to be more so next week if you want to come back when we're going to be doing, we're going to be talking more about the Chiefs. This one is a little bit more about the Lions game. But the Chiefs, good result, man. You guys, beating down on Baltimore, that was impressive. Super impressive. And the Chiefs to beat the Dolphins at home, to go into Buffalo, to go into Baltimore. Those are the two toughest places to play in the AFC, not counting Arrowhead. So good job by you guys. Edgar Descoli says, Isaiah Pacheco, Greenlaw, turn on. And that's the thing. So when it comes to, but the second half, the big thing with the defense wasn't particularly great in the second half. The Lions did get some things going offensively, but the big thing that I think the defense was able to do was able to make the timely plays, the 2 fourth down plays where we stepped up big time. Of course, you talk about the forced fumble by Tashawn Gibson and those just big momentum changers right there. And the defense was able to do just enough. Nick Bosa, couple of sacks. That was awesome. And but I think when it comes to the Super Bowl, we're going to have to make some big time changes. We're going to have to generate pressure. It's not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination, but let's not forget that the offenses that we've been going up against the last 2 weeks, if you look at Green Bay the last month, 6 weeks of the season, that Green Bay offense was looking pretty darn good. The Detroit Lions offense pretty much all year long, they were darn good too. We saw they were able to dominate. I wouldn't say they were able to move the ball against the Kansas City Chiefs defense. But yeah, Melissa says even if the Lions converted on their first, that doesn't mean they would have scored. I completely agree with that. I agree. There could have been turnovers, there could have been sacks, and then they're out of. A lot of different things could have happened. It's and that's the thing too is that when I hear so. And I've watched maybe a couple of Lions games this year. So, but I know that's Dan Campbell's thing. Goes for it on fourth down. And the stats, the next gen stats, whatever, it probably bears that out that maybe it is the better decision. I don't know. And look, he got his team to the NFC Championship game, did Dan Campbell. And so it's like, why change up what got you to where you are? And I get that. I don't know. It just felt like sometimes I have to think about it where you have to almost put yourself in the opponent's shoes and it's like, what do they want you to do? And maybe you don't do that. Like when I saw them coming out to go for it on those fourth downs, I was pretty stoked. I was like, look, if we just get a stop here. And it wasn't like it was 4th and inches. If it was 4th and inches, that's one thing. But it was like 4th and 3. Both times where, you can't just like quarterback sneak it or run up the middle necessarily. And they threw it both times. So not crazy about, just a shout out to that line, David McNiner. That's hilarious. But not crazy about, if you're the Lions, look, you live and die by the fourth down. It's kind of like, 3-pointers in the NBA and they it didn't work out for the I think that there's to you, let's use a John Lynch quote here, that thing that's saying that he goes aggressively prudent, where I think that there are times where, going for it on fourth down, I 100% agree with it. I don't know if those times that they went for it were appropriate. I mean, it was 24-10, and a field goal is not a sure thing. From what it sounds like, Badgley, their kicker, hasn't been amazing, but I just think you take the points. 24-10, if you kick the field goal, 7-8 minutes has come off the clock in the second half, and it's then back to a 3-possession game. I don't know, but look, that's for Lions fans, and they have the next 7.5 months to think about that. So, and so does Dan Campbell. Smoke 82's in the house. Let's go, Smoke 82. How we doing, buddy? Good to see you. Renee says, I ordered my 49ers Super Bowl 58 red jersey, sewn on patch, embroidered patch, and you ordered 3. Iron on. Wait, so the one of them was 74. The other one was $3.99. How much did you pay for those? How awesome was Kittle's pancake on Hutchinson? Forktail, how we doing? Yeah, that was awesome. Kittle had pancakes. You're looking at Feliciano had a few. I want to say that Colt McKibbis, there was one play, and I think it was maybe the play that you were talking about where I think Kittle had a pancake, Feliciano had a pancake, and maybe McKivitz at the end of the play did too. But I thought especially towards in the goal line situations, the blocking up front was great. I mean, especially that right side of the offensive line, which is definitely our weaker side of the line. NFL Captain C Patch, eBay sold out. Lions and Peter's, and what's happening, Peter? The Lions coach gave us an assist or two, spot on. I mean, and I think there is something to be said for that. Now, again, you typically do want to stick with what's worked for you through the season, but I think it must say something where when the Lions were going for it on 4th down, in both situations, I was actually kind of happy about it. I was like, okay, all right, let's do this. And it worked out. Edgar says, Mahomes hates opponent defense group organized mode. I mean, look, if you're organized, if you're disciplined, but you have to be aggressive defensively when you're playing Mahomes. It's when I see the Chiefs offense, it's so many just short passes. So I really want to see us be aggressive with Mooney, Ward, and Lenore just getting right up to the line of scrimmage. Yeah, David McNiner, how's it going, buddy? What's good, Shifty? Shout out that Lions DB that looked back at the perfect time. It just right off the face mask too, just unbelievable. And obviously, huge shout out to Brandon Ayuk for like just the wherewithal, the anticipation, the focus to come down with that. Incredible, incredible. Brian says, is it confirmed? Yeah, the Niners are wearing white. So it goes back every year. It goes AFC, NFC. They take turns on who is the home team. Now, the home team can choose what they want to wear. So, I mean, if the Chiefs wanted to wear their road whites, they could have, but they're going with their home reds and we're going with the whites. Mark Sorensen says, you tie your own hands by saying it's who we are. That's true, actually. I didn't even think about it that way, where I think something that's so important in football, I mean, we talk about, and Steve Wilks, I will criticize him for plenty of things, but something that Wilks has been just so good at is making adjustments at halftime. And by just saying, well, this is who we are, that gets you in trouble, especially in the playoffs when it's just one. I mean, I think that you want to have maybe like a general philosophy, and I get like being aggressive, and I get if the advanced stats say go for it, but sometimes, I think the players, they maybe just sense the moment. I think you have to kind of live in the moment sometimes and be like, take the points. I know the field goal is not a guarantee, but I think if the Lions kick that field goal and they put it through in the third quarter, if they make it 27-10, they're feeling real good about themselves. 3-possession game and so much time has already been taken off in the second half. Great to have Brian Culp here. Everybody go check out Brian Culp. Everybody go check out David McNiner, their YouTube channels. They do a whole bunch of 49er content. Only takes a second. Click on the channel, drop them a subscription. It's free and it really helps out. Melissa says, if they converted on 4th down, there very well could have been a turnover next. Yeah, exactly. And there is the whole, coulda, woulda, shoulda, all this stuff. And it's all hindsight's 2020, but I think I try and do my best to judge things in the moment, and I'll stick with that. I thought, I mean, when the Lions were going for it on fourth down, I was happy. If I was a Lions fan, like let's say if the roles were reversed, if it was 49ers in that, like I would have wanted Kyle Shanahan to send out Jake Moody. That's just me. I would have wanted to. When it was 24-27, I would have wanted to tie the game up. You know, they obviously, Dan Campbell clearly feels differently. That's how they're going to do things, and that's fine. But sometimes in the big moments, you know, I don't know, just I hate, and I don't even like the fact that, because I was about to say it, but I'm like, the fact that taking the points there are, and again, not guaranteed, but that's kind of seen as almost like conservative. I'm like, as like the conservative approach. And I'm like, I think it's just the smart approach. I mean, if you don't believe in Badgley to kick a 40-yard field goal, then just why do you even have him, you know? Johnny Dell's breakdown was the best I've seen yet. Yeah, Mark, Johnny Dell, he's the man. I'm a huge fan of his breakdowns. During the off season last year, I did a show on his channel. Actually, about a year and a half, maybe just over a year ago, I had Johnny Dell on my channel. Great guy. I definitely hope to do some work with him. He's a busy man. He does all his stuff for his website. Right now, he's at the Senior Bowl doing that. But so he's always busy. But I'm hoping in the off season to be able to do a show with Johnny Dell because he knows his stuff. Yeah, the different jerseys, you know, for the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl patch is pretty cool, I gotta say. Drew says, I think if Lions make both field goals, they still lose. Maybe. I just think that when it was 24-10 and they went for it on fourth down and didn't get it, I was pretty darn. I mean, if I was a Lions, and there's a really good Lions content creator. He's with Chat Sports, but so take that with what you will. I don't really know Chat Sports, but I know some people in my chat seem to not be the biggest fans of it. But his name's Micro Mike. He does the Lions channel there, and I watch back his live stream of the game, not the whole thing, but just kind of moments here and there. And I saw his face when the Lions went for that fourth down and it was incomplete. His face just dropped. Like, it's like he saw a ghost. And then maybe 3-4 minutes of game time later, it went from 24-10 to 24-24. Just, yeah, you could just really sense it. The ladybug, of course. The ladybug. I bought 3 different. That's cool, Renee. That's cool. The enamel. Do you got a ladybug enamel too? I would do that. Reggae, take the points. Peter says, nice thing about these midweek get-togethers is the truly faithful are here. Look, it's great when people can hang out. Of course, it's all different, times all over the world. And I understand it's a middle of the week and people are probably at work or school or, whatever kind of, whatever commitments that they have. For some people like me, it's later in the evening. But great to have everybody here, of course. And also shout out to the people who are maybe watching this back later. G says, you wake in the neighbor's Super Bowl night. Depends how the game goes. But if it goes the way that we want it to, then yes. Then absolutely yes. Drew, that's a good call. A ladybug emoji. I like it. Might have to do that. Forktail says, Edgard Ascoli, thank you so much for the $1.49. I'm not sure what the R is, but I really appreciate that, Edgard. That's super nice of you. And a hot dog does sound pretty freaking good right now with some ketchup and mustard and maybe, I don't know. That sounds pretty good to me. But thank you so much, Edgar. Appreciate you, buddy. That's awesome. Thank you. Let's give a shout out to Edgar Ascoli in the chat. Analytics are important, back to Forktail's comment, but football isn't just math analytics, can account for human elements, drops, fumbles, and HC has to understand that. Can you live with the decision if something go awry, says Forktail. I think Dan Campbell can live with the decision. I mean, that's just his MO. That's just what he does. And, I think that he's probably reconciled and he knew what was at stake. As a player, he's been, he was in playoffs on a few different coaching staffs. Edgar says, then buy Shifty, buy every, because I'm work. No, I mean, look, if you're working and you can listen and work, hey, that's all good with me. I don't want anyone getting in trouble or anything. But I think it's cool. I mean, I listen to podcasts and stuff at my work, so I hear you. But thank you again so much, Edgar. But yeah, Fortail. So yeah, I agree with you. I do agree with you where you have to look at different moments. But I think in the moment, you know, you can't question yourself either in some way. It's one of those tricky things where, but you do have to kind of read the room, or if you will, or read the sideline where, different things will happen throughout the course of the game, you know, and I think you have to adjust to that. And, you know, I think let's say again, 24-10, 4th and 3, they could have kicked the field goal. Like that would just really settle everything down, I think, for the hot dogs. That would have just really settled everything down, I think, for the Lions, where maybe they were like, well, the Niners just had a pretty good offensive drive. It's only a 2-possession game, but if they go, look, we kicked the field goal, 3-possession game, we're feeling pretty good about ourselves, then that's different, you know. But that changed, and look, that's a decision where if they went for a field goal, I mean, if they missed the field goal, I don't think. Here's the weird thing, and let me ask you guys this. Let's just say hypothetically, right? What do you think? And this is just, you know, just speculation. And what do you think would have been a bigger momentum shifter? Would it have been the fact that they went for it on 4th down and didn't get it? Or let's just say if they went to kick a field goal and if they missed that field goal, what would have been a bigger shift in momentum? I actually think if they went going for it on 4th down and not getting it, actually pumped up the Niners even more, just because the Niners, we couldn't stop the Lions offense, and that suddenly, bam, gave the confidence in the defense, and the defense started playing a lot better from that point. So I think even if they went, let's say if they sent out the field goal kicker, and even if they missed it, it would have been a big momentum shifter, don't get me wrong, but I think not getting it on 4th down changed things more. And that's just it's something that you can't look, that's just a hypothetical if they just sent the kicker, and it's something you can't necessarily measure. You know, some people don't believe in momentum. A lot of players talk about it, so I kind of say it's hard to disagree with that. But I think that they should have sent out the kicker, because in my opinion, the momentum shift wouldn't have been as big. Yo, Conspiracy Nuts is in the house. Let's go. And we got Rory in the house. Let's freaking go. But yeah, you know, it is one of those things where, yeah, the Lions, and look, but as Peter said, Dan Campbell owned the decision. He owned the decision, and that's all he can do. I mean, obviously you have to respect that, but he owns the decision. Stopping them on 4th was the best thing for the Niners. So Chua says, Shifty, are you worried about Jake Moody in the Super Bowl? A little bit. Here's why I say that. While he's had some clutch field goals in the playoffs, like the 52-yarder against the Packers, it was that in the 4th quarter. You know, he kicked a couple of field goals against the Lions, a couple of big extra points. Remember, extra points, it's a 33-yard field goal, but they're not absolute gimmies. And a lot of those, we needed them to tie up the game or get within, you know, one score. So I think from that aspect, you know, I wouldn't say that I'm worried. Here's my one concern. And a lot of things have changed throughout the season, but if we go back to the preseason against the Raiders, that's where Moody was awful, in Allegiant Stadium. I think that's what it's called, the Raider Stadium. So if I'm Jake Moody, I am, through Super Bowl week, I am practicing. You know, I know they practice before the game and probably leading up to whatever, but I am doing whatever I can to get into that stadium and just kick, get familiar with the stadium, I mean, I know it's a dome, so it's not like, oh, you have to adjust for like wind or anything, but just getting used to kicking in that stadium. No doubt Harrison Butker for the Chiefs will be doing just the exact same thing, and I wouldn't have a problem with that. But yeah, that's something that we got to think about a little bit because, and you know, I think it was maybe just a bad game that Moody had in the preseason. And that was the very first preseason game, I think. But I think what would be really good for Jake Moody is if, you know, let's just say early in the game, if we score a touchdown and you get the extra point, it's a makeable kick, you know, settle the nerves, of course. That would be the one thing that, but I would say a little bit worried. He's missed field goals in both playoff games. And when you go up against Mahomes, you can't let points like that go. So would I say a little bit worried? Maybe, yeah, a little bit worried, but, you know, it's one of those, I think you're always going to be somewhat worried. I mean, even if it was Robbie Gould, I'd probably have some concerns. I honestly think the D was pissed and woke the hell up, says Rory. I think so too. And that is, like, again, these are things that you can't necessarily, I mean, you can't measure them, but I do really think that changed the whole game. And if the Lions sent out their field goal kicker and he missed, that would have changed momentum, no doubt about it. But I don't think to the degree of not getting it on fourth down because it really just gave the 49ers defense so much confidence. It pumped up the D, but either one of them would have been the same for the offense. Offense scored a touchdown in both. That's true. That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, I just think from like a mental standpoint, especially from not even thinking about the offense, but thinking about the defense, when they're like, we stopped them on fourth down, that just the mentality flips, you know. Yeah, they all need to practice, of course. Yeah, 100%. Sorry, I think the Lions miss at least. They probably miss one. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's not like they were like 50 plus yarders, but even if it's hard to say, because let's say if they kicked the first field goal and scored, well, then the rest of the game is just different because we have to go crazy hurry up because we're down 3. You know, everything changes if that happens. Forktail, appreciate you, says David. I appreciate you, buddy. Appreciate you, man, and love seeing you and Brian, you guys doing your thing on the shows. It's always a good time. And yeah, if you guys can, check out David McNiner, check out Brian Culp a little bit further up in the chat. Only takes a second. Subscribe to the channel. It really helps out. Rory says, momentum is crucial because it's related to morale also, and you don't ever want to do something that will kill your morale and boost opponents. In my opinion, Lions kill morale with the fourth down fail, says Forktail. Yeah, you know, I think that the Lions were playing with a lot of confidence, and understandably so offensively, where I feel like they thought there was pretty much no way that they weren't going to get it. So that's one thing to be said. Clearly it didn't work out both times for them, but also I think that they were probably in their head, they're like, well, it's still a 2-touchdown game. They would still have to march down the field a lot. And plus when we get the ball back, we're moving the ball what feels like at will. So I understand the rationale, and that's really it's also a Dan Campbell thing. But personally, I'm kicking the field goal, but you know, the momentum change was great. Come on, everybody, hit that like button. Let's go. I think our defense played like their job on the line. There we go. There we go. Well, guys, when it comes to talking about the NFC Championship game, do you guys have any more questions or any other things that kind of stood out to you about that game? I was going to move on to maybe talking about whether we do our numbers game, or I actually have a question posed for the chat for something else. Joe says, I think our defense played like their job is on the line. They need to play like that in the Super Bowl. That's for damn sure. That's for damn sure. So yeah, just for those of you who weren't here for the beginning of the stream, next week, it'll be on this day next week, I will be doing a show with 49ers Ultimate Report, John Jay. Be doing a show with John Jay. It'll be right around this time next week. Then I will also be doing on my channel, I'll also be doing my own show preview of the Super Bowl. So that's going to be really awesome. Has Purdy ever run that much in a game before? I don't think so. I think that's probably because in the regular season, he only had like 140 yards or something. And against the Lions, he had about 50. So I think in the NFL, no. He's definitely run a little bit, though. We've seen him, like, he can scamper. And that's like, who was it that, I think it was George Kittle said he's like a dragonfly across water or whatever, but he scampers for sure. And he's faster than I think people realize. He's no Lamar Jackson, obviously, or he's not like built like a Josh Allen, but the guy, you saw it, the Lions on numerous situations weren't able to keep up with them, and he made them pay. What is one thing that you would like to see on field? So here's something that I want to see on field, and this is something that I was going to talk about in like when it comes to like previewing the Super Bowl, but I think water lizard, you're right, Drew, water lizard. Something that I think that I'd like to see on the defense, a little bit of a change on the defensive line. I would like to see as our starting like base defensive line, I want to see Nick Bosa, I want to see Javon Hargrave, Javon Kinlaw, and Eric Armstead. So Armstead on the edge. So if we look at Eric Armstead back in 2019, I believe, played a decent amount of reps on the end when Dee Ford is out, and Armstead was able to do pretty good work there. Now, it could be a little bit risky, and I'm not saying for every single snap you do this, but I'd like to see on maybe some potentially obvious run situations where you have Bosa, Hargrave, Kinlaw, and Armstead as your defensive line right there. And because those are just four big body guys. We know, I mean, Bosa is not as big as the other guys, but we know what he can do. But I think that could really help do a good job of like setting the edge, maybe getting some penetration in the run game, but also just, eating up those blockers, and potentially that could free up, your guys like your Fred Warners and Dre Greenlaws to make plays against the run. But that's something that I would like to see. Plus, by doing that, I think that what you would see too is, Chase Young 56 snaps against the Detroit Lions. I don't want to see Chase Young play 56 snaps. I would rather see him, again, maybe play 25 or 30 snaps. Randy Gregory, same thing, in your more passing down situations. That's what I would much rather see when it comes to the 49ers defense. You're going to get the rotation also of Kevin Givens and Sebastian Joseph Day and what have you, but I don't necessarily want to see Chase Young in there as much as he was. Injury update says Reggae Shark. I don't think they said Kittle and Ambry Thomas. I know Ambry Thomas had to leave for a little bit in the game. He was day to day. So, we can only assume that he's going to be good to go for the Super Bowl. I know some people might not be crazy about that, but I would start, I think Ambry Thomas, something that the Chiefs receivers have is they have speed. You look at especially like MVS, Rashee Rice can get downfield. So, and Mecole Hardman. So Ambry Thomas, if there's one thing, he is pretty darn fast. So I'm glad that he should be okay. And of course, they said, I think Kittle with a foot day to day, but he'll be fine. The team got into a first half brawl and got manhandled. I'm sure a lot was said in the locker room that gave them a character. You're right, Rory. I think you're right. I think that locker room, I bet there was cuss words and everything being thrown left, right, and center. Absolutely. Forktail said John Jay's 49ers Ultimate were dope. Yeah, he's a good guy. We used to do shows a lot together, but we both have crazy different schedules now. Back when I lived in San Francisco, because we were in the same time zone, we used to do shows a lot, but it's been a while. But I love doing shows with John Jay. He's a good dude. You're okay. So Jamaro Thomas says go back. Yeah, Chase. Okay, and yeah, I think I'm talking bad about Chase Young too much. He made some really good plays too in the run game. I think he made some really solid plays, and especially like getting off blocks and contain. So he wasn't a disaster. But what I would rather see when it comes to Chase Young is, again, I think 56 snaps a bit too much. I would rather see him out there for maybe 30 snaps. That's just me though. Dragonflies and ladybugs. It was great to see Bosa get a couple of sacks against the Lions. He's been quieter this year, but he's doubled. Yeah, Bosa got a couple of sacks, and it was a little bit interesting because I feel like they kind of came in situations where, I mean, they were really important, but it wasn't like as it was. I mean, I think the Lions were ahead by quite a bit during his sack, so it was like, oh, great, next play. Plus the defense, I just had no faith in them. No Border Sports, Ryan, how we doing, buddy? Good to see you, man. Great to have you here, man. We're going to be here just for a few more minutes. We've been live for about an hour or so, but just wrapping up what we're talking about, the NFC Championship Game. What a game it was, and the live stream was so much fun. Thank you, Rory, for agreeing on the D-line. Forktail says, wide nine being criticized by some. What is your opinion? Well, for the wide nine to succeed, especially in the run game, your edge players have to set the edge and contain the edge. And that's something that the injury that's kind of hasn't really been talked about. Of course, we're missing Hufanga because Hufanga's great, but I think Clelin Ferrell being out, that's been an underrated, it's been a loss. It's been, I think, a big loss. And there's a reason why he was starting for us so much. And I think some people were like, now like Chase Young or Randy Gregg, but like, I think Clelin Ferrell was really good at getting to the edge and just really funneling things back in the middle. For the wide nine to succeed, you really have to be able to set the edge where you force the runner to come back in, and that's where you have those gap responsibilities. So someone like a Fred Warner or a Dre Greenlaw can, really just make those tackles and, lay those big hits. But yeah, just one of those things. But you're right, Jamaro. Look, yeah, I think that Chase Young, and I know that it sounds like I'm been kind of going in on him, but he wasn't as bad as I think some people. I think there's some plays that you're just like, come on, man. But I don't think he was dreadful by any means. But it just you kind of expect a little bit more. Just with when we got him, and initially he was pretty darn good. But Rick Diaz in the house. How are you doing, my friend, this afternoon, this morning? How are you, my friend? It's just connected to your show. It's nice to see you this afternoon. And you're in Chicago, the Windy City. Beautiful. Beautiful. Super concerned with our O-line, says Drew. I am somewhat concerned. I feel okay about the offensive line. Look, it's not like we have all pros and pro bowlers across the line. So, it is one of those. It's one of those things where, like, I think they're playing better. I think John Feliciano has done a really good job at right guard. I think he's really helped settle things there, and also him being like the longtime veteran that helps Colton McKivitz. The one thing that was, I think, pretty difficult this year was the fact that Spencer Burford and Colton McKivitz, that's not really a veteran, right side of the offensive line. And I think there were definitely some struggles there, and teams took advantage of that lack of experience. But having John Feliciano in there, I think he's done a really good job, again, settling things down, being able to communicate with Colton McKivitz. And I get the left side is much better, Trent and Aaron Banks, and, you have Brendel. I think he's doing an okay job at center, but it's going to be, look, Chris Jones is, of course, he's going to be a problem. So we're going to have to figure that out. But I think how you figure that out is ideally if we can have success running running those wide zones, tire him out so he's just running left and right. And but when we need to, it's going to be, I think there's going to be key times where it might be use check or someone into block, and they're going to have to help out and stop Chris Jones. Rick wants to say hi to all the haters. I remember that Dre Greenlaw was injured, then he got, Dre, that was a big hit on Sam Laporta, but luckily he came back in pretty soon thereafter. Reggae says, we're blessed to be talking for it. And you're right. Look, there's only the 49ers and the Chiefs. We're the only two fan bases who can still be talking about, who we can still talk about our teams who still have a game left to play this year. So love it. Yeah, everybody's talking about Chase Young is not right with this guy. He's not doing his job. You'd like to see him be a lot better in the Super Bowl, 1,000%. Again, I think the way that you do that is maybe I don't want to say like limit his snaps, but I think that I think with Chase Young, when it comes to snaps in the Super Bowl, it's going to need to be, quality over quantity. I think 56 snaps would just be a bit too much. Jamaro says, I went back in, looked at it, didn't realize how good he did in the second half. When I watched it, didn't realize, well, I was drunk too. I felt like I was almost punch drunk with that. That was just the haymakers that the Lions laid on us in the first half. But it was, I think the second half, I think it was the play, it was the drive, it was when we tied it up. I think it was 24-24, and the Lions' first play of their ensuing drive, Montgomery at the middle gets nowhere, and I think Chase Young really blew that play up. And then they were forced to throw, and then they just drop, and then we get the ball back. So, yeah, I think he responded pretty well in the second half. I sometimes, we look at a guy like Chase Young and we kind of expect, you kind of expect more out of a guy, drafted that high and all that stuff. And we've seen him do some good things in the NFL, even with the Niners. That game against the Jaguars, he was running all over the place. But I'd rather go quality over quantity with Chase Young in the Super Bowl. Yo, CarCast, how we doing, buddy? Good to see you, my man. And then DJ Gene, the resident Chiefs fan. How's it going, DJ? Look, DJ, we got to consider ourselves pretty lucky. We're the only two fan bases left who are still talking about football and being able to talk about upcoming games. So it's a good feeling. Alrighty, guys. So we're going to do, just before we head on out of here, we have 28 people in here. So I want to pose two questions to you. And this is just a bit random, and this might be a little bit more for people who are somewhat in tune with like the draft. But first question is, if you guys can tell me a player who, when we drafted him, you were super stoked about. You were like, we drafted this guy, but then he turned out to not be that great. You were like, oh, super stoked about him, and then turned out to not be great, or not be nearly as good as what we wanted, expected, hoped. And then we'll flip it around the other way. And this might be a more difficult one, is maybe a player that we drafted that you weren't really happy with that pick, but ended up being like, oh my God, he's proved me wrong. He's been awesome. So I'll get the ball rolling on this a little bit. So the player that we drafted that I was really, really stoked about that ended up not being so great, there's a couple. I was really stoked about our 2017 first round. I was pretty stoked about Solomon Thomas and Reuben Foster, and then I was quickly proven wrong. If you guys remember, a first round pick Joshua Garnett out of Stanford, I thought he was going to be a really good guard. I remember, I think it was in the preseason or maybe early in the season, I thought he played pretty well, and I was like, oh, I think he's going to be really good. And then he was out of the league in a couple of years. So those are a couple of guys who I was pretty high on, pretty stoked about, and then they just ended up kind of being terrible. Now the players who, to flip it, the players who I was not super happy that we drafted, but ended up being really, really solid. This first one might kind of surprise you, but the first guy that we drafted who I wasn't super stoked about was, this is going to be blasphemy. Oh God, I don't know if I should say this. I wasn't crazy about, at the time, drafting Joe Staley because we had to trade up to get him, and we gave up like a future first round pick, and the Niners, we weren't great that year, and giving up the future so it was more so the trade, I think, that kind of threw me off. I didn't really know much about Joe Staley in the draft process, but I wasn't crazy stoked about giving away a future first rounder to get. I think we gave up like a second round pick and a future first rounder or something like that. But of course I was dead wrong, and I was so happy we drafted him. But that was one where I was like, I don't know. But he proved me wrong, and I couldn't have been happier to have been proven wrong. I'm trying to think who else in recent years who's kind of, I've just been like, oh, we drafted him, and then it's like, oh, he's actually really good. I know normally I'm like really spot on with it. But David McNiner says Javon Kinlaw is disappointing. Fred Warner was a pleasant surprise. Yeah, Kinlaw has been kind of disappointing, and I was pretty stoked because Kinlaw was basically like, of course, we traded away DeForest Buckner and we draft Kinlaw, and you're kind of thinking, ideally Kinlaw can be as good as, or at least relatively close to Buckner. But Kinlaw just has never really developed into anywhere near the player that Buckner is. Just didn't work out. Trey Lance pick let me down. Do not have enough knowledge on this subject. Having seen Trey Lance play in college twice, I was astonished he was drafted at all, says Drew. Oh, wow. Witherspoon and Drake Jackson disappointed. Akella Witherspoon, yeah. There we go. All right. Yeah, I'm a big draft guy. But yeah, the Joe Staley one, and it's almost blasphemy to say, but at the time I wasn't like super stoked on the pick, but he was amazing. Okie dokie. Let's finish the night off with, we're going to do a number. We're going to do a number, and let's go with number, let's see. Let's go with number 55. Who is everybody's favorite number 55? Who's played for the 49ers? You could throw out some other teams too. Favorite number 55. I think for me, I might have to go with Ahmad Brooks. I thought Ahmad Brooks was really good, a really good number 55. Ahmad Brooks. That's who I would maybe go with as, I'm trying to think who else wore 55. I'd probably go Ahmad Brooks. I like Ahmad. Interesting fact about Ahmad Brooks is I think he is one of the, you were 55 in high school, Drew. That's rad. We gave the Patriots a 7th overall pick the next, yeah. And that's where that's, okay, so here's the funny thing, David. That's a really good point. Because the Patriots end up getting the 7th overall pick next year. And they drafted Gerard Mayo. Who is the new Patriots head coach? Gerard Mayo. There we go. It's all intertwined, man. And Drew, look at, 55? There you go in high school. Yeah, 55. I think you kind of got to go with Ahmad Brooks. I thought Brooks was awesome. That defense, yeah. That defense with Aldon Smith, and man, can you imagine if Aldon Smith just was able to stay out of trouble? Just what a monster he was. Y'all bugging, go back, watch the film, please. The second half, Kinlaw was getting pressure. He definitely benefited in this. No, we're just talking about, well, when it comes to Kinlaw, we're talking about as a draft, like being drafted, he was like, 14th overall. He was supposed to be the replacement for DeForest Buckner. And I think that, Ahmad Brooks was one of the last guys taken in the supplemental draft by the Cincinnati Bengals all those years ago. I don't know if there's actually been another player taken in the supplemental draft. That probably would have been 2008 or 9 maybe. Ahmad Brooks was in the supplemental draft, but that's not really a thing anymore, the supplemental draft. But Jamaro, back to your point, I don't think we're not saying, I think Kinlaw has actually had some really nice pressures as well against the Lions and in the playoffs too. I think he's been okay this year, but with Kinlaw, he never lived up near to what DeForest Buckner was or what DeForest Buckner is. And that's where it was a little bit disappointing when you take the defensive tackle there. And look, he's missed a lot of time with injury as well. So I think when you look at Javon Kinlaw as a whole in the last, 4 years with the 49ers, definitely hasn't lived up to the billing in terms of what we were hoping for when we drafted him in the top half of the first round. But I think Kinlaw has been okay when he's been on the field. He's made some nice plays. It's a bummer that he's been injured so much. 55 favorite is Ahmad Brooks. Kevin Mitchell from the mid. Ooh, good call, Kevin Mitchell. Whenever I think of Kevin Mitchell, I just think of the outfielder for the San Francisco Giants. Kevin Mitchell, who caught the baseball with his bare hand that one time, running to the what you call it, like the baseline or whatever you call it. But yeah, that was the third baseline, but like in the outfield. But yeah, whenever I hear Kevin Mitchell, that's who I think of. But yeah, Ahmad Brooks, yeah. Shifty's NFL trivia knowledge is astonished. There's a lot of random things that just kind of stick with me. Random things like where players went to college and what year they came out in the draft and that kind of thing. Alrighty, everybody, we're going to end it there. We've been live for an hour and 15 minutes. I want to appreciate everyone for being here, for hanging out. Next Wednesday, I will be doing, again, a live show at pretty much this time with 49ers Ultimate Report. I will also do a live show at some point during the week, next week, maybe Tuesday or Thursday, where we're going to be getting real deep into previewing the Super Bowl, which is going to be awesome. And obviously, I don't think I really have to say it, but a week from Sunday, of course, we'll be here streaming the Super Bowl, 49ers, Chiefs. It's going to be awesome in Las Vegas. Doesn't get much better than that. But I want to thank everyone for being here. Appreciate all of you guys. If you haven't already, do drop a like on the stream. Do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks for hanging out. Great to have all of you guys here. And if you missed the start of it, then feel free to watch back. We kind of just went through the first half and the second half. We talked about the Lions game in the NFC Championship game. We kind of talked a lot about the decisions that Dan Campbell made. A lot of good things that the 49ers did. Brock Purdy was amazing. CMC was amazing. Defense made some big plays. We got the win. Huge comeback and just super impressive resilience by the Niners. And hopefully, we'll have to wait and see when it comes to the Super Bowl, but hopefully it's pretty stress-free and we can come away with Lombardi number 6. But we're going to talk about the Chiefs next week. Thank you again, guys, for being here. Appreciate all of you. I'm going to head on out of here. But before I go, I'm going to say 2 things. The butt counts. I'll catch you guys on the flip side. And also, Dre Greenlaw, get down, you idiot. Christian, that's for you, buddy. I know you're not here, but maybe you'll watch this back. But thank you very much, guys. Appreciate y'all for being here. We'll talk.